Do you believe in coincidence? Or do you sometimes feel that life is unfolding according to a script you haven't read yet? What if I told you that centuries ago, a man sat beneath candlelight, inked his visions into parchment, and those visions may now be unraveling before our eyes? This isn't fiction. This is the story of Michel de Nostradamus, better known as Nostradamus, the man whose name has become synonymous with prophecy. And in this video, we begin a journey into his most disturbing predictions for 2025. Predictions so vivid, so specific, and so unsettling that they might make you rethink your place in time. But before we go there, before we dive into volcanoes, artificial intelligence, global war, and even space threats, we need to understand the man behind the mystery. Let's go back to the year 1503. In the sun-soaked region of Saint-Rémy-de-Provence in France, a boy was born into a world gripped by plague, war, and superstition. This was no ordinary child. Michel grew up surrounded by books, languages, and ancient sciences. By the time he was a young man, he had already made a name for himself as a healer during Europe's deadliest outbreaks of the bubonic plague. But healing the body wasn't enough. He wanted to understand the soul of time itself. By the mid-1500s, Nostradamus began to pen what would become his most famous work, Les prophecies. Inside this cryptic volume were nearly 1,000 quatrains, 4-line, verses dense with symbolism, astronomy, and layered metaphors. He claimed these writings were based on a blend of classical texts, astrological calculations, and divine inspiration. And here's where things get eerie. Centuries later, people would point to these verses as chillingly accurate foresight into events like the Great Fire of London, the rise of Napoleon and Hitler, the assassination of JFK, even the horrors of 9/11. Coincidence? Perhaps. But when patterns emerge from chaos, the human mind begins to wonder, what if he really saw something? What if he saw us? Let's fast forward to our time, 2025. The world today is anything but ordinary. We're living through a moment of rapid transformation. Climate instability, political unrest, breathtaking advances in AI, and a looming sense that something bigger is on the horizon. Almost like we're standing on a fault line, waiting for something to snap. And right here, right now, Nostradamus's verses take on a new life. He once wrote of the earth trembling in a new city, the sky igniting above the ocean, and great rocks burning. Many believe this describes a mega eruption, a supervolcano triggering global catastrophe. And as we look to volcanic hot zones like Yellowstone in the US, Campi Flegrei in Italy, or the Ring of Fire in the Pacific, the imagery becomes less poetic and more prophetic. Another verse speaks of two brothers divided by strife, the fortress falling, and fire consuming the city. These lines have stirred fears of war, of collapse from within, and as global tensions flare, from Russia and Ukraine to China and Taiwan to fractured politics within the West, many are asking, are we seeing the cracks already forming? But maybe the most unnerving verses of all are the ones that speak to us not as nations but as people, individuals living in a world being reshaped by technology. Nostradamus describes a lone brain surrounded by followers, gifted with immortality. Could this be artificial intelligence? The dawn of digital consciousness? It's hard not to draw parallels when today, in 2025, AI writes code, paints art, diagnoses illness, even mimics the human voice. Is this the sage with the lone brain? He foresaw. Here's what makes this so powerful. Nostradamus didn't just write predictions. He planted seeds, ideas that force us to question whether our future is chaotic and random or deeply structured, like a script written by someone, or something with a higher vantage point. And maybe that's what draws us to his words, not just fear but fascination. The idea that someone centuries ago might have understood patterns we're only beginning to see today. So why are his predictions for 2025 hitting so hard? Because unlike vague horoscopes or general doomsday prophecies, the quatrains aligned with our present moment are strikingly relevant. Whether it's the rise of Eastern powers like China, the explosion of AI, the warnings of environmental collapse, or the subtle spiritual undertones about destiny and human choice. Nostradamus's visions feel like reflections in a cracked mirror. Distorted, yes, but recognizably ours. Some scholars dismiss him as a brilliant poet with a flair for the dramatic. Others swear by his clairvoyance. The truth? That's up to you. But as we explore his 10 most chilling predictions for this year, I invite you not just to listen, but to observe the world around you. What's happening in your country, your city, your home? The future isn't a headline, it's the next minute of your life, and if even a fraction of what Nostradamus envisioned comes true, we may be closer to rewriting the story of civilization than we think. So now let's dive deeper. In the next chapter, we begin with one of the most terrifying and immediate dangers of all, a force of nature so powerful it could plunge the entire planet into darkness, literally. But remember this, prophecy isn't about scaring people, it's about preparing them. Let's begin. If the future truly is written, then the planet itself may be one of its authors. Throughout his cryptic verses, Nostradamus often described fire, trembling ground, and skies lit with unnatural glow. For centuries, scholars puzzled over these images, unsure if they were poetic flourishes or grim forecasts. But now in 2025, with the planet warming, tectonic plates shifting, and storms gaining unnatural strength, those verses feel more like urgent warnings carved into time. Let's begin with one of the most visceral. Fire and ash raining down from above, the earth shaking and a city vanishing in smoke. One quatrain reads, "The earth will tremble around the new city. 2 great rocks will burn for a long time. The sky will ignite over the ocean. The city will be engulfed in ashes and flames." Now picture this, the Pacific Ring of Fire, home to over 75% of the world's active and dormant volcanoes, is humming with unrest. Seismologists have detected increased activity in places like the Philippines, Indonesia, Japan, and even the west coast of the United States. Mount Tal, Mayon, Fuji, and Yellowstone are not dormant. They are sleeping giants, and Nostradamus may have heard their groans before we ever had the tools to measure them. In his time, a volcanic eruption would have seemed like divine fury. But in our age, we understand the mechanics. Pressure building for centuries beneath Earth's crust, waiting for a hairline fracture to let it all loose. A supervolcanic eruption like Yellowstone could eject thousands of cubic kilometers of ash into the sky. Crops would die not from lava, but from lack of sunlight. This is what scientists call a volcanic winter, a period of worldwide cooling, crop failure, economic collapse, and mass migration. It's not fantasy. It's physics. And it's happened before. In 1815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted, creating what became known as the Year Without a Summer. Snow fell in June. Crops failed across Europe and North America. Famine and disease followed. Now imagine that scale of eruption happening today, when the global food chain is already strained, when climate change is pushing systems to their limit, and when billions more people rely on steady supplies of clean water, wheat, and medicine. The idea that the sky will catch fire may sound poetic, until you've seen footage of pyroclastic flows, scalding clouds of gas and ash moving faster than cars on a freeway, lava swallowing forests, lightning dancing within clouds of volcanic ash. It's real. It's happened before. And if Nostradamus's words mean what many believe they do, it could happen again, soon. But volcanoes aren't the only environmental threat buried in his prophecies. Another verse reads, "The parched earth will grow even drier. Rivers will mourn and the fields will perish." In this, many see a clear warning of climate change, a slow, unrelenting disaster already altering the fabric of life on Earth. By 2025, we're already seeing it. Historic droughts have gripped places like California, southern Europe, and parts of Africa. Rivers that once fed entire civilizations, the Euphrates, the Yangtze, the Colorado, are shrinking. Lakes are vanishing. Farmers, once stewards of abundant harvests, now dig deeper into cracked soil, hoping to coax life from land that's forgotten how to give. Meanwhile, coastlines are being swallowed by the sea. Cities like Jakarta, Venice, and even parts of Miami are facing a future where roads become canals and homes vanish under tides that rise higher each year. Hurricanes, once rare and regional, now tear across the globe with increasing fury, fueled by warmer oceans and unpredictable wind patterns. Wildfires ignite with alarming ease, and the season for them has all but vanished. They now burn year-round. And what does Nostradamus tell us in response? He doesn't offer comfort. He offers challenge. He calls us to witness the chain of consequences. Famine will spread as harvests fail. Insects will plague the fields. The cries of the hungry will echo across the land. Harsh words, but prophetic nonetheless. We are already seeing mass migrations. Families fleeing unlivable zones in Central America, in Africa, in island nations slowly drowning. When crops fail, conflict follows. When water vanishes, wars begin. And when heat overwhelms the body, civilization itself begins to unravel. But here's the deeper fear Nostradamus might be pointing at. What if these disasters are not separate? What if they are the same story unfolding on multiple fronts? Because with every burned field, every flooded street, and every storm that turns a town into a memory, something else erodes, our sense of stability. And what's worse than a crumbling building? A crumbling belief that tomorrow will look like today. Maybe that's why Nostradamus's visions still haunt us, not just because of the events themselves, but because of the spiritual crisis they stir within us. When the earth rebels, when nature no longer behaves the way it's supposed to, what is humanity left with? And perhaps that's the riddle hidden in these quatrains. They don't simply say, "This will happen." They ask, "What will you do when it does?" Will we wait until the skies turn black before we believe the warnings? Will we wait for cities to sink before we rethink how we build them? Will we treat prophecies as stories or as signals? The truth is, we've always lived at the mercy of the earth, but for the first time in history, we're also shaping its destiny. Climate change isn't just a natural cycle, it's an equation, one we're feeding every time we burn, consume, and expand without pause. The earth is shifting beneath us, and Nostradamus, it seems, already heard the cracks. So what comes next? We've seen the fires, we've seen the storms, but as his verses hint, these natural disasters may only be the beginning. The shaking of the ground may just be the prelude to the shaking of nations, because after the earth convulses, power shifts, leaders fall, empires fracture, and in the next part of our journey, we turn our eyes from the land to the halls of power. Get ready, because Nostradamus didn't just predict the collapse of buildings. He may have seen the collapse of entire systems. When the earth shakes, it's not just the ground beneath our feet that trembles, it's the structures we've built on it. Not just the buildings, but the systems, the alliances, the illusions of stability. If Nostradamus was right, the fires of nature will be followed by the fires of revolution, of politics, of ideology, of power. In one of his more cryptic but potent verses, Nostradamus writes, "The great empire will be replaced by another, a small place of lethal area. They will come to expose the false exploits of the ambitious man from the West." For centuries, this quatrain puzzled scholars, but in recent years it has drawn chilling parallels to global political shifts. Many now believe this verse speaks not of a single battle, but of the slow systemic erosion of global leadership as we know it. And in 2025, that erosion seems well underway. Once the West was unquestioned in its dominance. The United States, the European Union, their allies, these were the architects of global finance, military presence, technological innovation. But as we edge deeper into this decade, cracks are forming. Cracks that Nostradamus may have seen long before we were ready to acknowledge them. Consider the shifting alliances around the world. Once strong diplomatic ties between superpowers are now strained. Treaties once regarded as unshakable have become fragile pieces on a diplomatic chessboard. Trade wars, tariff battles, and military posturing are no longer the exception. They are the background noise of global discourse. And then there's China. The dragon will rise in the place of the falcon, Nostradamus alludes in another. Translated verse. The symbolism is unmistakable. The East is rising, not just economically but ideologically. China's Belt and Road Initiative has wrapped around much of the globe, building infrastructure, buying influence, and quietly establishing a new world order. Its rapid advancements in artificial intelligence, 5G, surveillance, quantum computing, and space exploration have not only closed the gap with Western nations, they've begun to reverse it. Nostradamus wasn't specific. He didn't name names. But the imagery, the great empire being replaced, the exposure of false exploits, that sounds a lot like the disillusionment growing across Western societies. Politicians once seen as saviors are now questioned as manipulators. Democracy, once heralded as the pinnacle of governance, is being strained under the weight of misinformation, populism, and division. This is how empires fall, not always with an invasion, but with erosion from within. And as if that weren't enough, there's another player in this prophecy, one without a flag, one without a heartbeat. Artificial intelligence. Nostradamus refers to a lone brain, a sage that sees with neither eyes nor soul, a being invited by disciples to become immortal. These aren't the words of a 16th century poet fumbling for metaphors. These are frighteningly modern descriptions of machine intelligence, our own creation now stepping beyond our control. In 2025, we are witnessing a revolution not of industry, but of consciousness. AI now writes our emails, finishes our paintings, edits our genomes. It predicts our purchases, diagnoses our illnesses, mimics our voices. Some call it progress. Others call it the beginning of irrelevance. Machines don't sleep. They don't strike. They don't forget. They are designed to outperform us, and they are already doing it in fields once thought uniquely human. What happens when intelligence is no longer tied to biology? When a brain can outthink every general, every scientist, every politician, and do it in milliseconds? The world has not answered that question, but Nostradamus warned us to ask it. He writes of eyes to the south, hands in bosom, bodies in fire, imagery many interpret as a warning against blind worship of a false prophet. Perhaps the false prophet is not a person, but a creation. An algorithm, a synthetic mind we elevate to godhood without understanding its implications. And here's the part most people don't want to admit. AI doesn't have to be malicious to be dangerous. It simply has to be indifferent. A machine optimizing for efficiency won't care about compassion. It won't understand human suffering. It may make decisions that are perfectly logical and perfectly inhumane. Already, there are debates across the world. Should AI be allowed to control nuclear weapons, police surveillance systems, medical triage? In some cases, it already does. In 2025, we are trusting machines with decisions of life and death, and we are doing so faster than we are learning how to regulate them. But this part of Nostradamus' vision isn't just about technology. It's about choice. It's about the disciples, the followers, us. He doesn't say the lone brain forces itself upon the world. He says it is invited. That might be the most chilling line of all, because it means we are complicit. In our search for convenience, for progress, for profit, we are the ones handing over the keys. We're the ones asking the machine to lead. Not because it's right, but because it's easy. History shows us that empires fall for many reasons. External, invasion, internal decay, revolutions of thought or technology. But most of all, they fall when they forget who they are, when they forget the values that built them, when they place trust in things they don't understand. And that is the warning Nostradamus offers. Not that AI will destroy us, but that we will let it. So now we find ourselves at a global turning point. The East is rising, the West is divided. Machines are learning faster than our laws can adapt. And the old balance of power is shaking like the ground before a quake. But remember this, Nostradamus never claimed the future was fixed. His prophecies were not declarations, they were warnings. Mirrors held up to the soul of mankind, asking us to reflect before we act. The fall of empires is not inevitable. It is a choice made over time, through silence, denial, and distraction. But that also means a different future can still be written. In the next chapter, we explore the one warning Nostradamus gave that may eclipse all the others. A war not just of politics or machines, but of nations. A prophecy of fire, betrayal, and cities burning. Because if the world does not change course, the next great war may already be loading its chamber. If nature shakes us and technology rewrites us, then war breaks us. It is the final threshold in every prophecy, the edge of the cliff, the irreversible step. And Nostradamus saw that too. A vision not of peace rising from chaos, but of fire, betrayal, and bloodshed. The kind that tears the sky apart and leaves history gasping. In one of his most unsettling quatrains he wrote, "Two brothers torn apart by strife. The fortress falls. The great leader will succumb. The third great war will ignite, when the big city is engulfed in flames." These are not vague poetic musings. These are chilling in their familiarity. Let's break it down. Two brothers torn apart by strife. Many have interpreted this line as a symbol of nations once allied, now divided. Think about the strained partnerships in our world today. The US and Europe, once shoulder to shoulder in diplomacy, are facing rifts over trade, military strategy, and global leadership. Russia and Ukraine, once culturally connected, now locked in bloody warfare. China and Taiwan, two lands, one history, one violently disputed future. All of them potential brothers poised for separation, conflict, and catastrophe. Then he says, the fortress falls. A fortress is not merely a building. It's a symbol, a bastion of security, of dominance. And today that fortress could be the fragile infrastructure of global peace, the United Nations, NATO, even the digital frameworks that keep our world connected. The fall doesn't have to be physical. It could be economic collapse, a cyber attack, a political implosion, and it's already happening in whispers. In 2025, military analysts warn not just of tanks and missiles, but of code. Silent invasions launched by keystrokes, and then comes the line that stops every heart. The third great war will ignite when the big city is engulfed in flames. This isn't speculative anymore. This is a possibility discussed in military think tanks, policy forums, and international strategy briefings. All it would take is one spark, one city, one strike. Could it be Taipei in a conflict over Taiwan? Could it be Kiev? Should Russia escalate its ambitions beyond Ukraine? Could it be Tel Aviv, Seoul, or even Washington, D.C.? The scary truth is, we don't know. And Nostradamus didn't tell us. He gave us the match, but the hand that strikes it might be ours. This is what makes his prophecy so disturbing. He doesn't describe a global war beginning with an army, but with a city, with fire, with collapse. A moment that comes not with warning sirens, but with smoke on the horizon. And if this prophecy is truly about a third world war, then it's about more than bombs. It's about the death of diplomacy, the collapse of reason. And most terrifyingly, it's about technology playing a lead role, because wars of the past were fought by soldiers, but the wars of the future, they will be started, directed, and possibly ended by algorithms. Automated drones, AI decision systems, cyber weapons, these are not the tools of tomorrow. They are the arsenals of today. Already in 2025, militaries around the world are testing AI-controlled weapon systems, drones that decide when to fire without human input. AI that can jam enemy satellites, shut down power grids, or send false signals that could provoke retaliation. Think about that. A single line of bad code could trigger international chaos. A hacked satellite could redirect missiles. A glitch in the system could become the end of everything, and Nostradamus seemed to know. His vision of bodies in fire could very well describe not just nuclear weapons, but automated strikes, machines killing machines, and humans trapped in the middle. The idea that the next world war might not start with speeches or declarations, but with a cyber attack no one even realizes has begun until it's too late. But war isn't just about weapons. It's about hearts, and Nostradamus's vision speaks to that too. In another quatrain he references, "The cries of the mother will rise in the city, the tyrant will fall, the people torn between hope and vengeance." That's not the description of a battlefield. It's the cry of a broken society, the kind of fracture that comes from within, riots, coups, civil unrest. The kind we're already seeing across the globe, divisions fueled by inequality, extremism, and desperation. It's not hard to imagine. In a world recovering from environmental collapse, economic instability, and unchecked technological disruption, trust erodes. Institutions falter, communities divide, and people search for anyone to blame. Nostradamus may have seen that too, But perhaps the most haunting part of his war prophecy is what he doesn't say. He doesn't describe who wins because, maybe in this kind of war, there are no winners, just survivors. The question becomes, can we avoid it? Is this conflict already unfolding in silence, or do we still have a moment to stop it? If there's one consistent theme in Nostradamus's writings, it's this: destiny is not immutable, the future is not concrete. It is written in ink, but ink can be smudged, rewritten, even erased if we act in time. And this is where we come in, as individuals, as a generation, as a species. It's easy to watch the news and feel helpless, to believe that war, collapse, and catastrophe are inevitable, that they are the consequence of forces too big, too abstract to influence. But Nostradamus didn't write his quatrains to inspire fear. He wrote them to awaken awareness, to make us think before we act, to remind us that prophecy isn't fate, it's a possibility. So here we are, standing at the edge, fire in the sky, machines gaining minds, the earth turning on its axis faster than we can adjust. And one final question remains: will we be the authors of our own downfall, or the editors of our future? The war he spoke of, the one with brothers torn apart, cities in flames, and great leaders falling, does not have to be ours. But if we ignore the warnings, it might be. Because the final test is not about power, it's about wisdom, and the greatest wisdom of all is knowing when not to strike.